With you today. What an impressive group of people. I love the t-shirts. I got to find out where to buy one of those. I love the Center for Advancement of Leadership. One of the things I'll just mention briefly is the work that we are doing around the world on leadership. And personally, I've had the opportunity to work with Fortune 500, Fortune 100 organizations from the board level and the C-suite all the way down to the entry-level employee. I've had the opportunity to work with the military. I've been to the White House to meet with the President. I've met with the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on a couple of occasions in his office in the Pentagon. I've been to the Pentagon dozens of times. But the single most inspiring thing that I have had the privilege of doing with my time at Franklin Covey is taking these theoretical and somewhat high-minded concepts of leadership and bringing them down to the elementary school level. It's absolutely phenomenal to see these concepts of leadership that we'll talk about today and that you've been working with for now a year or two or longer than that. And I love the focus on application that you have as part of this program. I think it's absolutely amazing to see these children take concepts of leadership and begin to use them and watch them apply it. You know, you don't even have to dumb the language down. They get it. They get this notion of leadership. We did a study of what organizations want when they hire. And what do you think that it is that they want? Just toss out some ideas.
Communication skills.
Okay, communication skills. What else? Experience, loyalty, be able to write, yeah. Okay, they want you to be someone that can fit within a trusting environment. All these things, interesting, of the things that you mentioned, most of those were leadership skills, weren't they? They assume that you know how to do math. They assume that you know the basic sciences and that you know how to read and those sorts of things, right? But in schools, what do we test for? We test for those things. What is it that organizations want when they hire? Leadership and character. It's a very, very interesting irony out there that the very thing that organizations want that sets us apart really from the rest of the world is leadership, and yet we don't test for leadership. We don't do any of the things that you're doing in this program. I have to applaud what Dr. Jackson and others with him have created here. This is very, very inspiring to watch this group in action. I feel very privileged to be here today. All right, well, let me just introduce myself for a second, then we'll jump in. So I'm Shawn Moon. I have been with Franklin Covey on and off for about 20 years. I did spend a little bit of time with an organization back east for a few years. I have been in the field of leadership and helping individuals and teams and organizations perform at their various highest level for a lot of my career. I love it. I love what I do. I love working with people. I love working with teams. I love helping people accomplish their objectives. Before you can accomplish your objectives, you kind of have to know what your objectives are, and you would probably not be surprised to learn that as we have surveyed now. And I heard Andy Sindrich's name, and he can speak very directly to this because he's been working, one of your upcoming speakers, working very specifically in the world of our execution practice. But I think it's now about 450,000 individuals and about 3,500 different teams. And we asked them a number of questions, but one of the questions we've asked them is, can you tell us your organization's goals and objectives? Can you tell us your team's goals and objectives? What do you think the answer we get back is? Almost universally. Less than 15% of organizations around the country, around the world, in all organizations, education, government, for-profit, not-for-profit, military, about 15%, only about 15% can tell you even the gist of what their organization is about. Isn't that a travesty? Isn't that amazing? Amazing statistics. So you have to be able to be clear, a clear vision on who you are and what you're about. I graduated from Brigham Young University. I have a wonderful wife and 4 great kids. My oldest son is your age, and it's a privilege to be able to work with this group. As was mentioned in the introduction, I actually wrote a book that was targeted to this age group. I remember being your age. I remember being consumed with lots of things and lots of goals and lots of plans. I remember one particular day, my wife and I had just gotten married, and I was in school and she was working, and we had all kinds of things going on. I had all kinds of projects and tests at school and a number of assignments at work and client activities that had some pretty tight deadlines. And so the morning that we left, we lived in South Provo, and our routine was something like this. We'd get up together, have breakfast, then she would drop me off at school in time for my 8 o'clock class. And then she would drive to North Orem, where she worked at Word Perfect at the time. And then at lunchtime, she'd come all the way back to pick me up. We'd have lunch together. Then she would drop me off at work. Then she would go back to work. And then she'd pick me up on the way home, and we'd be home sometime in the evening. We put a lot of miles on one car in a year, as you might imagine. This one particular day had lots going on. So the morning we said, okay, here's the plan. Now, Michelle, I need to make sure you're there right at noon because I have all these things that I need to be doing. So can you make sure that you're there? Yes, you know, yada, yada. So I step out of my class at noon. I've gotten to know this part of the sidewalk very, very well, as you know in just a minute. And I stepped out and I looked, and fully expecting to see our one car pulling into the parking lot to pick me up. And it wasn't there. I wonder what was happening. You know, this was well before if you can believe this day even ever existed, but it was well before the age of cell phones. So I didn't really have any way of contacting her, so I started to pace up and down this sidewalk. 15 minutes came and went, and she wasn't there. 30 minutes, 45 minutes. At that point, I thought, well, maybe I ought to go into one of the professor's office, borrow a phone. But I know the moment I step into that building, she's going to show up. I'm not here. She doesn't have any way of contacting me. She'll just assume that I found another way of work. So I decided not to do that. I just kept pacing up and down on the sidewalk right by this big old pine tree. An hour came, an hour and 15 minutes. Finally, she pulls into the parking lot. Michelle, talked about this. You know, I have all these things, all these pressures, all these deadlines. And she said, I'm sorry, Shawn, I had a meeting at work. I couldn't get away, and you know, these things happen. So lump it. You're just going to have to deal. And so I said, you know, you're right. I swallowed hard, and we got past it. So the next morning, based on what had happened the previous day, I had you know, an increased amount of things that I needed to get done. So we had the conversation again. Here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do. I step out of my class at noon, fully expecting to see my car in the parking lot. Well, predictably, it wasn't there. I started to pace again. 12:15 came, 12:30, 12:45. I started to get really nervous. Has something happened? Is everything okay? 1 o'clock came, 1:15 came. I thought, if something hasn't happened, it's going to happen when she gets here. 1:30 came, 1:45, 2 o'clock. Finally, at 2:15 that day, I realized that I had the car. And she had been waiting for me. Those are the hands that you're in today. But have you ever had that experience where you see the world a certain way? You are sure that that's how it is, right? How you see the world impacts what you do, and what you do impacts the results that you get, which in turn drives how you see the world. Well, let me introduce a couple. This is called a paradigm. I think most of you have, by show of hands, have been through the 7 habits. Okay, good. This will be a bit of a refresher for you, but I think this content is very important to refresh often. Okay, so we're going to go through this fast. I hope to leave you with 3 key paradigms that you can go back and think about and work on and make sure that you are really driving to application in your life. Let me start off with a couple of videos. I hope I get them to work. We'll see. This is the test. Okay, these are a few paradigms of leadership. There's something about unleashing the potential and talent of others that is a big component of leadership. Let's watch another one of these.